Module 2, Palo Alto Firewall features. Palo Alto Network's next generation firewall features: application visibility, user visibility, threat prevention, URL filtering, data filtering, and file blocking, wildfire. So they all are basically security features. Because if we break down like next generation firewall features into three different sections or categories. So the first one is security features, and then the next one networking, and third one management. So let's start with the first one, that is security features, right? And before like I just explain different features, security features here in Palo Alto Firewall, before that I want to discuss a very important point here, and that is security zone, right? Really very important. So I'm going to start from that only, and then I'll be back to application visibility, user threat, URL, data filtering, and wildfire. But before that, let's understand what is a zone in Palo Alto Firewall, because Palo Alto Firewall is a zone-based firewall, right? Of course, it's a stateful firewall. Stateful Palo Alto Firewall maintains connection state table, okay, but also known as a zone-based firewall. So let's understand what is a security zone in Palo Alto Firewall. Okay, so zone is basically, security zone is logical grouping of physical or virtual interfaces, right, with similar requirements, security requirement with similar security requirement. So basically, zone is logical grouping of physical or virtual interfaces with similar security requirement. So if there is a firewall like Palo Alto firewall and two interfaces, they both connect to two different LAN segments, LAN 1 and LAN 2, Ethernet 1/1, Ethernet 1/2, and the interface Ethernet 1/3 Internet, and the fourth interface is DMZ, demilitarized zone, right? I hope you understand what is DMZ, demilitarized zone. So publicly accessible resources are generally placed here in the DMZ zone. Demilitarized zone, a completely isolated network from our protected network, a trusted network, that is internal networks. All right, so what we do, like we put web servers or some other publicly accessible servers in separate network, separate zone, that is DMZ, a completely isolated, decoupled, right? All right, so here in this diagram, if you look at the Ethernet 1/1 and 1/2, so let us assume that they both have similar security requirements. So what we can do, we can put both the interfaces in one security zone, right? And define with a name like inside security zone, okay? And external interface Ethernet 1/3 in different security zone outside, and Ethernet 1/4 DMZ. So now there are three different security zones: inside, outside, and DMZ. And And even it's not optional, in fact, that putting interfaces or interface in security zone, mandatory configuration, compulsory, right? Interfaces need to be in a security zone. Otherwise, interfaces cannot send or receive traffic. So they need to be in security zone. Okay. And even there are different types of security zone, layer 2, layer 3. I'll explain that later on, like when we will discuss different deployment scenarios or Palo Alto firewall interface type. But for now, you can understand that a security zone is logical grouping of interfaces. And the benefit of doing all this is what? We don't have to apply if have you ever worked on Cisco zone based firewall? Right, in Cisco routers, if I talk about the zone based firewall, so there also what we do, we put interfaces into different zone, and then we create ACL and apply that, right? Just to ease out administrative effort, administrative task, in fact. So if there are 5 or 6 interfaces and traffic is flowing in different direction, in, out in DMG, so really it's very cumbersome, like creating COD access list, and then applying as inbound, outbound with different interfaces. So instead of doing all this, the easiest method is like creating zone, putting interfaces into zone, and then like in a zone pair, we apply the policy or the access list. Very similar to that here in Palo Alto firewall. What we do here, we create security policy, and in security policy, we define if traffic is coming from the inside zone and destined to outside zone, and then application service, and then finally action, whether traffic should be allowed or denied. It means security zone is included in security policy as a first line of defense. First line of defense. So security zone is first line of defense, and by default in Palo Alto firewall, traffic is freely routed, moved between the interfaces of same security zone. It means if Ethernet 1/1 and Ethernet 1/2, they both are in the same zone, that is inside. So we don't have to create any security policy to allow traffic between LAN 1 and LAN 2, because they both are in the same security zone. So communication here is intra-zone communication within the same. It's the default security policy, implicit security policy in the Palo Alto firewall. But what about a traffic flow between two different security zones? Allowed or not? Not allowed, right? In both the direction. Not from inside to outside, and even not from outside to inside. Zero security trust model. Remember, I talked in the first module, zero trust security, not to trust anyone. Even internal user, inside users, enterprise users, they are also not trusted by Palo Alto firewall. So Palo Alto firewall philosophy is not to trust anyone, verify everyone, right? Whether you are in the corporate network, you are sitting at your home or anywhere else, you'll have to verify yourself before accessing any resource through the firewall, of course. So traffic across different security zones not allowed by default. So what if we want to allow the traffic that is moving between different security zones? So yes, for that we will have to create explicit security policy. With that, yes, traffic will be allowed. Okay. So in Palo Alto firewall, interfaces need to be in security zone, right? Layer 3 interface means layer 3 security zone. And what is security zone? Logical grouping of physical or virtual interfaces or sub interfaces, tunnel interfaces, loopback interfaces. They all need to be in security zone, right? So I'm not talking about only the physical interfaces. Even if you create sub interfaces, and I hope you understand what are sub interfaces, right? That one queue tagging sort of thing, like that you must have created so many times in Cisco devices. So sub interfaces, yes, they need to be in security zone. Loopback interface, tunnel interface, physical interface, yes. And you understand, interface, either physical, virtual, or sub, cannot be member of more than one security zone. Okay, interface cannot be member of more than one security zone. If Ethernet 1/1 is in inside zone, so cannot be in any other zone. Okay, good so far. Understood concept of security zone here in Palo Alto firewall, and that is why Palo Alto firewall is also known as a zone based firewall. So even like creating security policy is very easy, simple, because we match traffic like of course with source and destination zone also. Apart from matching traffic with IPs like the source and destination IPs, ports, right? And of course protocol number. Protocol number also we match traffic with the source and destination zone. So like if Palo Alto firewall here, and let me further like extend this discussion because really very important, and that is why I want to explain further. Palo Alto firewall here. Let me take this Ethernet 1/1 in inside zone. Inside is the security zone, and Ethernet 1/2, Ethernet 1/3. There are two like additional interfaces, and they all are in different zone. Ethernet 1/2 is in outside, and let's say this one is like a VPN zone or something different zone. Any name, just the name, right? Now, if Palo Alto firewall receives a packet, so a packet coming from the LAN side hits the Ethernet 1/1 interface. So how the like packet is allowed or denied? So for that, 6 important informations are required. 6. First, source IP, of course, destination IP. 2 information. The third, source port. Fourth, destination port. Fifth, protocol number. And sixth, zone. Source and destination zone, both. 6 tuples are required or needed to create session table, right? No upper layer data, of course, only 6 tuples. So source IP, destination IP, they both will be there in the IP header. What about the protocol number? Yes, in the IP header itself. In the IP header itself, there will be protocol number, right? So protocol number, source IP, destination IP, and protocol number or protocol number is used to to define like which upper layer protocol has been used. Is that TCP, UDP, ICMP, GRE, ESP, right? So IP protocol number is used for that purpose, and then the port address is used to like define the upper layer protocol, application layer protocol. Okay, so for TCP there will be different protocol number. For UDP like 6, 17, 1, like for the ICMP, GRE, ESP 50, AS 51, and so on. All right. Okay, so source IP, destination IP, protocol number. Good. From the IP header, source port, destination port. From the TCP header, in case of TCP, TCP based application. Then what about the zone? Source and destination zone, both are required. Source zone and destination zone. Source and destination. Okay, source zone, obviously, source zone will be inside. Okay, why? Because Ethernet 1/1 is the ingress interface and Ethernet 1/1 is in inside zone. So now the problem here is finding out destination zone. Okay, and without knowing the destination zone, packet can never match with any security policy. Because whenever we create security policy, we specify source and destination, both source zone and destination zone, right? Like source inside zone, destination outside zone, or maybe some different zone. So the problem here is firewall can easily identify or retrieve or like five information like source IP, destination IP, protocol number from IP header field, source port address from layer 4 header, destination port address. Agreed? Sixth, zone. Again here zone, source zone, obviously easy to identify. But what about the destination zone? A challenge here, destination zone. And without knowing destination zone, packet can never be matched with any security policy. And that is why Palo Alto Firewall, what it does, Palo Alto Firewall first checks the routing table. Routing table. Why? Because from the routing table, exit interface can be determined. Egress interface, right? Because in routing table, if like there is matching route for the destination IP in the routing table with the exit interface, right? So very easily destination zone can be identified. Because if the destination interface is, let us assume Ethernet 1/2, and now firewall knows that Ethernet 1/2 is in outside, so easily identified that the destination zone is outside. Now the packet can match with the security policy, right? So whenever we create security policy in Palo Alto Firewall, so we include both like source and destination zone. And that is why routing has to be done before matching the packet with the security policy, because in order to identify the destination zone, in order to determine the destination zone, exit interface should be known. For that, routing table is referred. And that is why in packet flow we always talk about the routing first, and then like NAT security or some other policy, in fact not relevant of course here to discuss. So Palo Alto firewall is a zone-based firewall. What is security zone? Logical or physical grouping of interfaces. Interfaces need to be in a security zone. An interface cannot be member of more than one security zone. Security zone is first line of defense. It is used as a matching criteria in the security policy. We include both source and destination zone. There we never talk about the interface like Ethernet 1/1 or Ethernet 1/2 as a whole, like as a group we consider. And even like at advanced level, even we can have like a zone protection profile created and associated with the like zone, in fact. So if there are two interfaces, uh, one like connects to ISP1 and the ISP2, both interfaces are in the same zone outside, and we want to protect like both the interfaces from different denial of service attacks, right? TCP SYN flood attack or amplification attack, UDP flooding, right? So what we can do in Palo Alto Firewall, we can create a zone protection profile, and we can put that profile with the zone, in fact. So both the interfaces will be protected in that way. Another good feature. So yes, you should understand that Palo Alto Firewall is a zone-based firewall, and I hope you all understand what is a security zone, why we call it a zone-based firewall, and what's the real advantage or benefit. So of course, uh, it minimizes administrative task, administrative effort, and even like Palo Alto Firewall, of course, very easy to manage. If I compare Palo Alto with any other firewall, so Palo Alto Firewall, of course, very simple dashboard from where we create the security policy. We do a lot of management, traffic logs, and all that. It's really very simple, very easy to understand. So even if you are coming from the network background, you don't have any knowledge in security, you don't have any knowledge of any network firewalls, right? You have never worked on any like firewall device. So even like Palo Alto firewall is the best firewall to start your security journey, like because understanding Palo Alto firewall is simple, easy as compared to other firewalls. So I don't want to take any vendor name here, but yes, like Palo Alto firewall is simplest one, of course. A very good dashboard, ease of administration, very easily we manage, we create policy, we do troubleshooting and all that. Of course, you need to understand the concept, the packet flow, right? So if you understand that properly, the theory part, so troubleshooting, creating policy, management, monitoring, not a big deal. Believe me, like it's really going to be very simple here. All right, so let's start with the next generation firewall features then. So I hope you understand, like because already you know like stateful, and now you also understand zone-based firewall. All right. So the first point, Palo Alto next generation firewall feature application visibility, also known as app ID. So app ID feature is like to identify applications, is to identify applications. So Palo Alto firewall like Pan OS 10 has more than 3,500 well-known or commonly used applications in the database, so they can easily be identified. Even with the security policy, we can control like individual application or group of applications very easily. And even in case if like for any homegrown application, even Palo Alto firewall provides flexibility to create custom signature. So we can also create custom signature for like our homegrown application, right? Because in Palo Alto application database, of course, you will not find signature of your own application. So for that, you can create custom application, and even you can ask Palo Alto also to create signature for you. Will take time, of course. Palo Alto team will take time, but if you have active subscription, then even you can ask like Palo Alto support team to create signature for your custom application or your homegrown application. But application visibility means deep inspection inside the application data to identify the application. So very difficult to use any evasive tactics to bypass the firewall here. And what do I mean by evasive tactics? Evasive tactics is like port hopping or protocol hopping, right? Or tunneling inside another protocol, tunneling inside another protocol, maybe encryption, tunneling inside SSH or SSL. So there are different evasive tactics can be used to bypass the firewall, right? Legacy firewalls, traditional firewalls, of course, but next generation firewalls very difficult because like at very granular level, in fact, they examine the packet, in fact, to identify the application, even the sub application, if even if the application is identified, right? So firewalls, what they do, they have like application decoder to just to know like further like what is exactly like the application or sub application is. So for that, like protocol decoders are used, right, by the Palo Alto firewall for application visibility. Even if it is encrypted and there is SSL decryption policy, so first like the content will be decrypted and then app ID will be used to identify the application, right? And that is why we are using the term application visibility here. And we'll talk further about application visibility and app ID feature of Palo Alto because very important. And but before I just move on to the next one, let me very quickly show you like the application signature database and all that in Palo Alto firewall. Okay. So dashboard of Palo Alto firewall, and of course like in a lab session, in fact I will explain different tabs here like the dashboard, ACC, monitors, policies, objects, network devices, and from where to start with. And what if you have been given a brand new firewall? So how to do the initialization? I mean, like how to start configuring your Palo Alto firewall and about the license subscription. So definitely I will explain from the scratch from the very beginning. I'll be not using this firewall in fact for the lab purpose. So we will start from the scratch. I mean, like if there is a brand new firewall, a hardware firewall, or a virtual firewall, so how you should start doing configuration. So I will talk from there. So because my objective is not like to show the configuration and all that. My objective is just to to be familiar with the app ID and all that. So here, like in Palo Alto Firewall dashboard application sections, there are total 3,487 commonly used applications like application signature database here, and different category, subcategory, risk level defined by the Palo Alto firewall. So out of 3,487, 142 applications are like high risk application, risk level 5. So even we can create a single security policy to block all risk 5 applications. I will show you how to do that, because here like we have application filter option and different tags there, right? And if you want to create like a custom signature for your own homegrown application, then you can click here add, and then you can create a application. And commonly used applications are listed here. It means the Palo Alto firewall has application intelligence, has like knowledge about the different applications, right? Their behavior, working. So yes, with the security policy we can control applications, not only services. And you should understand the difference between services and application, right? So whenever we just go ahead and create a policy in Palo Alto firewall, like any new policy there, like security policy I mean, so of course like we have to include source and destination zone apart from the address. Source and destination address, uh, four are of course important components. We have to start from the name and then source here, right? Then in source column, like see here, like source zone, source address, both need to be specified, source zone and source address. And the same here in the destination section, right? In destination also, destination zone and destination address. But and the next tab is application and service, right? I will talk about URL category later on. So application and service, they both are different. Service is something like same, like if you allow TCP port 80 and TCP port 443 and the UDP port 53, like the services, it means TCP port 80 and 443 and UDP port 53 based all applications will be allowed. We are not controlling, that means individual application, right? So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Gmail, Google, they all are HTTPS based applications. They all use TCP port 443, right? So what if we want to control individual application? Okay, so for that we just like specify applications here in application category, application column in fact, not service. So service means like the ports in fact, and application means like application like Google, Facebook, or Instagram, even trace route, ping, telnet, SSH, DNS, they all are application, right? And of course applications, not necessarily applications means HTTP and HTTPS based only. DNS is application, ping is an application, trace route is an application. So application not necessarily means like HTTP or HTTPS space. Okay, a program or software is known as application here, not URL or website. I will explain that later on. So you understand, like in Palo Alto firewall, for this application visibility means to identify application. Palo Alto firewall has a very huge database of application signatures, application information, or application intelligence is there. Okay, next point. Next feature, security features, is user visibility. So the application visibility means app ID. User visibility, also known as user ID feature. So you understand, user visibility means identifying users. Identifying users. For what reason? For what purpose? So maybe for the logging purpose, auditing purpose, right? Security policy reason. If we want to create a security policy based on users or groups, so yes, user identification will be required then. What about logging and auditing? Generally, log messages have like source IP, not the username, because by default there is no user visibility. User ID is not enabled by default. It means in log messages we will not find the username, only the source IP address. But what if we want to know username also, right? And maybe another use case like VPN, remote access VPN, or captive portal. So for any reason, if you want user visibility, you want to know the username, maybe for logging, auditing, reporting, or maybe you want to create security policy based on users or groups. Okay, you want to allow like social networking category, URL category for a group of users, right? Irrespective of their IPs. You are not bothered with the IP. Maybe IPs are dynamically assigned from the DHCP server. Users are like the laptop users. Sometimes they connect to corporate network, maybe home network, some other open network. The adapters configured to obtain IP automatically, so you don't know like their IPs. You want to create policy based on groups or users. So again, for that, user visibility is required. And even for user database, Palo Alto Firewall supports external directory service, and the commonly used directory service is Microsoft Active Directory or LDAP server. So we can integrate our Palo Alto Firewall to use or utilize Active Directory database. I'll like discuss about this LDAP integration later on, and very important of course, and even we will do a lab of it also, LDAP integration and all that. Okay, so user visibility means identifying users. So you understood application and user. And the third one is threat prevention or content ID feature. Inspecting the content. Basically, application visibility is what? Let me explain both, application visibility and like the app ID and content ID, right? They both are different, not same. So let me put it on the way. So here your Palo Alto firewall and web application server in my DMG, a corporate network, external interface that goes to internet, and I've created a security policy on Palo Alto firewall to allow incoming HTTP traffic, right? Incoming HTTP traffic. So there is a security policy to allow incoming HTTP traffic, right? But the policy has app ID, means application, as web, not as a service. It means in security policy, TCP port 80 is not only allowed, that application any and TCP port 80. No, of course port is always important. So don't think in that way. Like if I'm talking about next generation firewall, Palo Alto or Checkpoint or any other firewall, it means port address is not important. Port address is always important because initially session is created based on IPs and ports. So even Palo Alto firewall will initially check the port address, port number. So application must be running on their default ports. Okay. So primarily port address, yes. But in security policy, application is also specified there as the web application traffic. So now here app ID will come into picture. So app ID will identify application whether incoming application is HTTP or not, right? It means after performing deep inspection, inside the application data. So app ID job, app ID role is what? To identify application. Let us assume that application identified as web application. App ID job is done. Okay, app ID role is job is done. So app ID job is to identify application. Application identified. Application identified as web traffic. Good so far? Now, what if the HTTP request is illegal? HTTP request is not legal, or maybe HTTP request has some malicious data, virus, or spyware or adware, okay, inside the payload. So that's not the job of app ID. In fact, app ID job is done. Application identified web traffic. What next now? We also want to ensure that no illegal request should be allowed by the firewall. Okay, no illegal request should be allowed by the firewall security policy. It means even if the application is HTTP, good, but if the request is illegal, not as per the RFC, like the HTTP header is not as per the RFC compliant, or maybe illegal HTTP method has been used, or some malicious data there, then should be denied. But app ID will not do that. App ID job done, identifying application. So now here content ID or threat prevention has to play a role here, right? So threat prevention, or rather I would say here content ID, means content inspection is required here to find out or to identify any threat. Okay, maybe like some SQL code there in the data, SQL code injection attack, right? If you are aware with SQL code, so you understand, very dangerous, right? SQL code injected in like inside the HTTP data. So definitely, if like firewall finds any SQL code, a pattern or string matches with the signature, so the request should never be allowed. Okay, so if content ID is there, threat prevention like the vulnerability profile or anti-spyware, so definitely requests will never be allowed. So application visibility or app ID and content ID, they both are two separate features of Palo Alto firewall, right? And uh, Palo Alto firewall or Palo Alto pre-sales teams, they very aggressively use both like app ID and content ID to sell their products. App ID and content ID very aggressively. In fact, both app ID and content ID, both terms, and not the both the third one, that is user ID. So basically a lot of threat prevention based on content inspection, content ID identification or inspection, because once content is inspected, then can be checked for any known or any like a virus or attack or something. Okay, so threat prevention means in backend content engine or content inspection. So in Palo Alto firewall there are three terms: app ID to identify application, user ID to identify users, right? And the third one is content ID for content inspection. There are three like separate features. And threat prevention further, if I talk here, so in threat prevention, in fact, can be antivirus. So if like any, for example, let's say internal user is downloading a software, a program from internet through Palo Alto firewall, and the software has virus, the data has virus in it. So Palo Alto firewall will stop that, right? Because it has signature database, and if pattern or string anything matches, I mean like the signature matches, then request is denied here. It means user will not be allowed to download any infected file infected with the virus, right? Apart from that, spyware, another good feature. And here, like in the spyware, there are like different like in fact options like adware, uh, DNS security, DNS sinkholing, right? Keylogger, P2P, so ND spyware, right? And the third one is vulnerability protection profile, very similar to you what do you call it, IPS, intrusion preventive system, right? So if like prevention from cross-site scripting, SQL code injection attack, or cookie tampering, a lot of other attacks. So very good profile. So again, a part of threat prevention. So threat prevention means like prevention from spyware, malware, viruses, vulnerability exploitation. We will like talk about different security profiles in detail, even like we will cover the topic in theoretical way. I mean like theory and as well as practical lab. So we will do the demonstration also of like different security profiles here in Palo Alto Firewall. I will show you. The next security feature here is URL filtering. So URL filtering, you understand, like we can like prevent internal users reaching out any malicious website, or maybe like CNC websites or phishing websites. So we can stop that, and even like based on categories, or even we can create our own custom category also. So that is also possible here in Palo Alto Firewall. We can put like individual websites in our custom category, and then either block or deny action. And even apart from block and drop, in fact, there are some other actions also in URL filtering. I will talk about that also later on. Of course, not the right time. But URL filtering, you understand. So it's another security feature here. Apart from that, data filtering, you understand like preventing leakage of sensitive data information like the credit card number, or maybe email IDs, or some other like a US social security identifier number. So data filtering is like very similar to your DLP concept, data loss prevention, or in Palo F5 ASM there is a feature known as data guard. So data guard or data loss prevention or data filtering, one of the same thing. So file blocking, another important feature here to block like different file types. Wildfire is something like prevention from the zero-day attack, like the sandboxing technology. So they all are different security features here in Palo Alto Firewall. Uh, of course, like there are networking features, management features, but mainly first we are talking about security features on this page, on this slide. Like they all are from the security features. And let me before I just uh, go to the next slide, let me show you like threat prevention options also, like the security profiles in Palo Alto Firewall. And then I will be discussing about the network and management features of Palo Alto Firewall, right?